Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Institute for Government. My name's Hannah White, and I'm the CEO of the IFG, and it's fantastic to have so many of you here today, and lots of people we know signed up online for this event. So thank you very much for joining us for this event titled Inside Trump's America, in conversation with Tim Ryan. Now, Tim is, of course, a former US congressman, a former Democrat nominee for president, and he is here in the UK with the Progressive Policy Institute, where he is a senior advisor to PPI's Campaign for Working America. And we're really pleased to have him and have the opportunity to hear from him today, to hear his reflections on the current political situation in the US and what it means for the UK and the Starmer government. I should also add, I know that PPI have some really interesting research coming out tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that, looking at lessons from across the globe for the centre-left. And I'm also delighted that in a break from normal IFG practice, Tim is going to be in conversation with Anushka Asthana, who is Channel 4's new US editor. So I get to relax in the audience. So take it away, guys.
Thank you so much, and what a delight to have you here, Tim. So what we're going to do is I'm going to spend half an hour not grilling you, but asking you about Trump's America, and then I'm going to open it up to questions, and I believe questions that will come straight into this iPad as well. So I will do my best with this. I want to start with a hypothetical question. I know politicians don't love them, and it's quite hard to assess in a way, but just to give us a sense of how Donald Trump is doing so far. If the presidential election were to be rerun tomorrow, would he win, and as convincingly?
Trump has always been looked at in contrast to who he's running against. And I think, against Hillary Clinton, that was a kind of a contrast that worked for him. The old Joe Biden in 20 during the pandemic was not a good contrast for him, so he lost. And then I think the Democratic brand going into the last election benefited him as well. I think his numbers are a little bit underwater now. It's always hard to tell. The big beautiful bill did not play well. It kind of drug out. It was a tax cut primarily for the wealthy, huge deficits, and running up the debt and cutting health care for people. So that generally is going to be unpopular, I think, as it gets implemented. So it's hard to tell with him because it really does rely on who he's running against, and with a really damaged Democratic Party brand, if we did the same thing again, he would probably win again.
Is it still as damaged?
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's get into that. But just before we do, I noticed
that's why we're here.
Yeah, lots to talk about. I noticed that when you talked about 2024, you said brand, you didn't mention Kamala Harris. Mm-hmm. Do you think she wasn't the issue then? Do you think it was the broader brand?
Her issue was she did not distinguish herself from the brand. So a lot of people remember that the comment on the TV show The View, I think it was The View, she was asked, would you change anything or what would you do differently? And she said, I don't think I would do anything differently than Joe Biden did. And my response to that, I think a lot of Democrats' response to that was very negative. And when you look at the accounts of how the Trump team responded to that, they immediately took the clip and started texting it out across the political universe because they knew linking her to the damaged brand, linking her to Biden was going to be a big winner for them. And so she was unable, and she had an opportunity. I think those of us were, pretty disappointed. I wrote an op-ed for Newsweek right before this happened, and basically made the case that she was a prosecutor, and that she should click that on immigration, on prosecuting whether it's big tech or the big banks or the big financial interests, like be the prosecutor on behalf of the average people against these big interests who are kind of keeping you down. And that never happened. There was no flip of the switch. She ran as a Democrat under a very bad brand.
I mean, difficult to step away from the brand when you were the vice president. If there had been more time, if there had been a primary, could it have been very different?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the original sin, from the book was that Jake Tapper's book was that Biden should have never run. I mean, it was ridiculous to think that he was going to run again.
And that was only because of his age and his health, not because of his policies?
Well, not so much his policies. The immigration thing was a huge anchor around his neck because he never dealt with it. That was a big one. But he had 3 major achievements with the infrastructure bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, which was all the investments into the clean tech, and then the CHIPS Act, which was about getting America building high-end chips again, computer chips again. But he wasn't well, and so he couldn't articulate it. So I think as someone who grew up, my first campaign was Bill Clinton. I just would think, what would Bill Clinton do with this agenda? What would Barack Obama do with this agenda in their ability to sell it to the American people? And President Biden just couldn't do that, and that was a major anchor around his neck too. He maybe could have sold that and pivoted somehow on immigration. But at the end of the day, he shouldn't have run. We should have had a big primary, and I think things would have been different.
You mentioned the book. I mean, it's a brilliant book if anyone hasn't read it, by Jake Tapper. It made it feel like many people were complicit.
Oh, it's depressing. Like, I need to lay down and have a therapy session with you here just to
we could do that later. You give me some advice.
Kind of work through it again, because I remember it was almost a year and a half before Biden ran. I said on CNN he should not run again. And I got pilloried. I just got hammered on social media because I was veering from the team, right? Saying the truth.
Well, the Politburo.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't veer from that. And there were a lot of people on the inside who clearly covered it up. And then I think there was the next circle of people who knew and didn't have the courage to say anything. And to me, it's like, on the Democratic side, it's like, it's not an intellectual problem that we have as Democrats. It's an emotional problem. We lack emotional strength. We lack the courage to tell our own friends, no, like, we can't do that because there's a broader and greater good here. And love or hate Donald Trump, he'll say things to the base that have to be said in order for him to have broader appeal to the electorate. And he'll say it and deal with it.
Like, what? Give me some examples of that.
I'm never going to cut Medicaid. Then he goes and does it.
Except he's just, yeah.
But, gay marriage, transgender. It's like, I'm not going to worry about that. We can't worry about that. We got to focus. And he would pivot back and focus on the economy and immigration and the things that worked for him. We don't do that. And that was the epitome. I was just telling, we were talking earlier, just imagine you're a Democrat in the United States. You're a rank and file voter, and you say, Trump is a threat to democracy. For all the reasons we would, know about. And the response from a Republican to you as a Democrat is, now hold on. Joe Biden rigged the primary as a Democrat, right? New Hampshire was our first state, and then it was South Carolina. He switched that around and made South Carolina the first state so that he can run in the strong state that he won the primary in. There were 0 debates for the Democrats. He said, I'm not debating. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., love him, hate him, vaccines, whatever your opinion. This is Bobby Kennedy's son is running for the Democratic nomination, and he doesn't get a debate. So they say, you're rigging the democracy. We're not. Now that argument's a wash because we were doing the same thing they were doing in the eyes of most people.
And it feels like an establishment stitch.
Totally, yeah. And who's the anti-establishment candidate? Donald Trump. So that's a significant disadvantage for Democrats.
And so we'll come on to the remedy in a second, but just, you mentioned the big, beautiful bill. You mentioned Medicaid cuts that he said he wasn't going to do. That bill will hurt a lot of Republican voters. in parts of the country that are really key to the next presidential election. It's been cleverly done. The cuts won't come in until just after the midterms, and then they'll have another 2 years. But what's the motivation behind it that means that Donald Trump is pushing so hard when he does seem to me someone who understands, has a feel for what his voters want?
I go back to when he was a contractor in New York City, Atlantic City. He was building casinos, and he had small business folks he was dealing with. He had unions he was dealing with. Didn't pay him. Like, literally would not pay them. Like, he didn't care what the end result was. He cares about what it looks like, how can he sell it, and that's why he was pushing so hard. In the fact that the cuts for healthcare, Medicaid, rural hospitals, poor folks who have to go in a nursing home, a lot of that's paid by Medicaid, won't come in until after the midterms. He just got the win, right? And so it won't be his problem because he doesn't have to run again. And so he doesn't care, He got to sell the tax cut and whatever 2 or 3 things that were in there.
But he needed the support of those who might run in the next presidential election.
If he was running.
No, but I mean, he needed the support of JD Vance. He needed the support of, both houses. Those people are going to run, some of them, one of them.
I just don't think he cares.
Right.
I don't know if that's going to shock anybody or not, but
does it tell us that the essential driving thing he desires is tax cuts?
That was the primary thing for him.
Okay.
That was the primary thing, and that's going to blow a huge hole in the debt. And again, this is all getting pushed off to, the next group of legislators and presidents to have to deal with. But it's also ultimately going to go on the back of the American people.
And I'm very much looking forward to getting out there and reporting on this. I've actually spent the last 20 years reporting on politics here in the UK. I know you've been working with Deborah Mattinson, Claire Ainsley, who've done amazing things with the Labour Party to change it. Let's talk about what the Democrat Party does now, because a lot of people are looking for hope, and they're quite excited by what they see in New York, and they're quite excited by the results of the primary there. I suspect you're not that excited about it, but I want you to tell me about it. What does the primary victory of Mamdani tell us about the situation at the moment?
Well, I thought he ran a brilliant campaign. I mean, his campaign was brilliant. He spoke on the main top line anxiety that people feel in the United States, and that's affordability. Whether it's housing, just normal day-to-day costs. This is how Trump won, basically, on inflation and the pocketbook issues. And he hit that. The problem is his solutions, in my estimation, will make matters worse. Government-run grocery stores and other things that really don't make a whole lot of sense. And not working with the business community in a place like New York, where you don't have to be in the bag with them, but you have to work with developers. You have to work with people who are trying to grow the economy. And so, it could potentially be very worrisome that the National Democratic Party, when we're already struggling with our brand, is now going to be labeled socialist, which is going to make matters even worse, for us. So I'm really concerned about it. The underlying thing, just to take kind of a half a step back, I think that the main problem in the country, the biggest challenge in the country, is that we have a spiritual crisis in the United States. And I say that in the sense of spirituality being connection. There's a lack of connection between our fellow citizens. There's a lack of, we think because we have the technology, we're actually more connected, but at the end of the day, we're less connected. It's more vitriolic on social media. We spend a lot of time on what our differences are as opposed to what we have in common. We've been disconnected from nature, in the sense of urbanization and, lack of parks, and our rivers are dirty. And, like in Ohio, the EPA sends out periodically something in Ohio: don't eat more than 2 fish from the Ohio rivers in like a month. I'm like, well, that's an interesting way of just kind of warning somebody that, so like all of these things, and including personal like connection with your own higher power, or how you connect, because we're just so busy and we're all in our heads and we're in our phones. And you look back 100 years when there was a more rural atmosphere, people had quiet time. There wasn't all this noise all the time. You'd maybe read the paper, you'd maybe turn on the radio, you went to church. I'm not saying we need to have like a church and a hardcore dogmatic religion. I'm just saying you need some quiet time to appreciate each other and the world. That's the that disconnection is the underlying problem. And I think in some sense, Trump tried to solve that. He created kind of the cult of personality around the MAGA movement, which people felt a part of something. And then it kind of devolved into some things that can kind of be kind of ugly. But I think it highlights the desire for people to want to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves. And so the Democratic Party has to provide some level of that new vision for America. And we've not been able to do that. And it's kind of funny, Jimmy Carter had an aide back in the late 70s who said, about his critique of the Democratic Party was that the Democrats show up to a gunfight with a 10-point policy plan. So it to me that speaks to where's the vision? Where's the and we may touch upon some of this. I know I will while I'm here, but like AI and blockchain and crypto and these new technologies across the board. Which party is going to assemble this shift in the country and say, okay, all this is going on, and here's how we collectively deal with it, and here's how we make a great America again. What's America 2.0 look like? If the party can do that, they'll leapfrog MAGA, because MAGA is still kind of in the weeds, and people are aspiring for something more than a tax cut. And I think we've been in this crisis for a while. I mean, after 9/11, they asked George Bush, what can you do to help? And he said, go shopping. I went to John F. Kennedy High School. It was like, no, you go to the moon. Let's go big. And Democrats got to capture that somehow.
But haven't they captured it to some extent in New York? I mean, what is it? Can you kind of explain to me why that worries you in, say, Pennsylvania or Ohio or Arizona?
I think the brand of our party has been, generally speaking, a coastal brand. So it's been New York and then San Francisco. And the middle of the country, they do not identify with socialism. That's just not an American value. And so it has you look at how many people voted in a New York City primary. Again, take nothing away from this young man. He ran a great campaign. But that is a very, very small slice of an electorate that is primarily progressive and liberal. And it was 103 degrees that day. Many older people didn't come out and vote. It's just a small slice, but it gets amplified into that's the brand of the Democratic Party. So I think the lesson is he talked about affordability. So get off the cultural issues and get on the pocketbook issues. That's the lesson to me, and then have better remedies, better solutions than we're going to open up a government-run grocery store.
And so the voters who you need to win in the states that matter the most, because obviously you have a completely different electoral system to here. 7, 8 states might decide who the next president's going to be. Who are those voters, and what do they want? How are they going to get that vision that you're talking about?
They want you to care about them more than you care about protecting your own interests. I think that was part of what hurt Biden too, is he was perceived, and his inner group was perceived, rightfully so, as caring about protecting their own power, more so than worrying about them. So it has to be a direct connection to them. You care more about them, hopefully a candidate that comes from them, that they see
I think that's critical.
They see themselves in them, and it's got to be economic. It's got to be again, Biden touched on some of this with building infrastructure and building this and building that and $35 insulin costs. It's got to be economic. It's got to be pocketbook issues. It's got to be prescription drug costs. It's got to be, how these economic systems are really rigged against the average person. That's the message. You start I use this example all the time. If you walk into a room in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or Youngstown, Ohio, outside of where I grew up, or Wisconsin or Michigan, working class Arizona, or North Carolina, like any of these areas, they're all kind of the same in that sense. If you walk into a room like this, and I'm running for Congress or Senate or President, and I start talking about abortion or gay rights or whatever cultural issues, okay? I may be 100% in agreement with the progressives, which I generally am for a lot of those issues. If I come into that room and that's what I start talking about, you will get 0 votes. Even if half the people in the room agree with you on those issues too, because the first 10 issues on their dance card are my rent, my mortgage, my car payment, my prescription drug costs, my energy costs, gas prices, on and on. Like the first 10 are economic. And so if you don't meet them where they are, they're never going to vote for you. And I think Democrats for too long have really led and been perceived on the cultural issues, which aren't necessarily popular in middle America. Not that people are against it, but why are you talking about that when I can't even afford? It was the same with the environment. Now that I'm on a complete rant,
Go.
It's just like the environment too. Like you talk about climate change, and we got to go green, and we got to do this, and we got to do that, and people are like, I don't have. In Democratic leadership, they're mad at voters for not being for climate change, and they're like, I'm trying to pay my bills, and you're coming talking to me about windmills. Like, I don't have time for that. I get up in the morning and and I got to live my life.
But is it fair? And obviously Donald Trump speaks to that. He seems somewhat obsessed with windmills whenever I watch him on Truth Social.
That's true.
It seems to be the thing he mainly, when he does attack the UK, it seems to be that we're building too many windmills. But some of those on the left are talking economics. They're just talking socialist economics, aren't they? And I guess their argument, and I just want to push on this one more, and then I want to move on to JD Vance, is Donald Trump is not a traditional Republican. No. He's come in, he's ripped up their party, he's thrown it aside, and he's found a new way of speaking to voters. And I guess what they're arguing is the pragmatism of the 90s, say, which I know a lot of people, PPI and other parts of the Democrat Party have come through. Maybe that's not what's needed in 2025 because people feel differently. I often think this in the UK. 2025 is nothing like 1997 when people tried to compare Keir Starmer to Tony Blair. Mm-hmm. People don't have trust in politics. Mm-hmm. They don't like politicians anymore. They are reading siloed information that, reinforces their view of the world. Mm-hmm. Maybe they need something completely explosive and different. That's what some on the left of your party are arguing. So aside from the point which I think you've made really passionately, which is we need to be talking about the economics, mm-hmm. How do you persuade them that you need to be talking about the economics from a more centrist perspective than from a more left-wing perspective?
Carville always used to say during the Clinton campaign, he was from Louisiana, so he had this southern draw, and he said, you need to explain it to him. You need to explain it to him. I actually think that people, especially people in the middle right now, are so frustrated with the either or, you got to be on the red team or the blue team, that if you just talk to them like they're adults, and you actually, okay, here's why we need to focus on apprenticeships, and you're agreeing with them on the emotional part of why are you forcing everybody to go to college? Why does everyone got to be so smart and go to college and go to Harvard? And Trump preyed on that, right? And Biden was going to forgive tuition for student loans. So we were all in with the college educated. Now, if you come in and you say, let me explain to you why it's important that we help people get apprenticeships and that we have shop class and apprenticeships starting in high school. Because we have to build these factories around chip manufacturing. And you just kind of walk through, so you're agreeing with them on the emotional piece, and then you're explaining to them why it's important and why they're important. Why them getting skills is important for the country. And then you tie it to the broader vision that I mentioned earlier about, where we need to take the country. That's what we're lacking. And I give Bernie Sanders, I give AOC, I give Mondami all the credit in the world for bringing this conversation back to the economic issues. That is a huge contribution. Now the discussion needs to be, okay, what's your answer? Here's our answer. And I think what Claire and I and the PPI team are trying to work on is having a counterbalance to free grocery stores, free college, free healthcare, free.
Sounds good, though.
It's limited because in a cynical electorate,
they don't trust you.
They don't trust it. Like, okay, it's free, right? When they were talking about forgiving college loans for school, the average working person was like, wait a minute. I get up at 6 in the morning, I get in my truck, I drive to the work site, I go build something all day long, I get back at my house at 7 o'clock at night, I barely get to see my kids, kiss them goodnight, maybe eat dinner with them, make a decent wage, get up in the next morning, I do that all week for 5 or 6 days, and you're taking my tax dollars and you're gonna pay for someone to go to college. I don't like free. They basically say, it's not free, I'm paying for it.
Yeah, of course. So the one argument basically being, not everyone's getting everything for free. Someone's paying for it, right. And who's going to pay for it? And of course, the economic competence argument, which is a big thing that Labour tried to fix here in 2024. And I will ask you about Labour. I'm going to start taking questions quite soon, but sure. I'll lace that in. But I must ask you about JD Vance. So what was he like to run against?
I had a lot of fun during the campaign, debating him. It was very spirited.
Do you get on with him?
Not really. But that's what made it fun. He's a very smart guy, very well educated, Harvard, Yale, law school, the whole 9 yards, very smart. He is the top Trump sycophant.
Do you think he believes it?
By title and otherwise. I think he's talked himself into it, yeah. I mean, I think he's talked himself into it, and people have a way of being able to do that to themselves.
It's quite a turnaround compared to what he said in the past.
Yeah, it's really incredible. I mean, we literally had an event in Youngstown, Ohio, where Trump came and did a rally, and JD was there. And, excuse my language, but Trump says from the podium, and JD's sitting in the first row here, and he says, yeah, and JD Vance, he's been kissing my ass to get my endorsement for months now, right? Well, and this is why the campaign was fun, because I used that the rest of the campaign. But JD Vance, after that, gets back up on stage and shakes hands and taking picture, and he's smiling with Trump. And I was just like, I grew up in working class. I was like, I don't know anybody I went to high school that would allow someone to embarrass them like that in front of the whole world and then get back up on stage and shake his hand and grip and grin with him.
So why did he?
He wanted to be senator, he wanted to be vice president, he wanted Trump to love him. Trump's very much a father figure to a guy who came from a very broken home, and his #1 goal in life is to have the approval of the father figure, and I think there's a lot of Republicans like that. And so he'll do and say just about anything, including coming to Europe and giving a speech that is hostile, because he knows he's going to pick up the phone and call Dad, and Dad's going to be very happy with him. And he has an audience of one.
Do you think Trump feels the same way? It's
hard. No, I don't think he does. I think I don't see him as a very affectionate guy, who has relationships like that. It's just, it's true. I mean, it is what it is. We all know what the environment's like. And I don't think it's a two-way street. I know he's very close to the kids, and that's how he got the VP nod, is that Don Jr. was a big advocate for him to get that position. And he was not going to get it right up until the end, and then Trump is very instinctual with his decision-making, and he picked him at the end.
And do you think he could be the next nominee, the next president?
I think he's got a really good chance of being the next nominee. I just, and this is all in the context of like political skills. This has nothing to do with issues or where you stand, I don't think there's anyone in the current MAGA movement that comes anywhere close to the political skills of Donald Trump. Nowhere close. Not JD Vance, not any of his kids, not any governor, senator, no one.
On both sides?
Well, pretty much on both sides at this point, but definitely on their side. No one can hold a candle to Donald Trump on the Republican side. And so I don't know how he holds this, how anyone can possibly hold this movement together. Because there's only one guy who could call Congress and say, you're going to, all the fiscal conservatives and the fiscal hawks were like, we can't vote for this. This is going to put $3 trillion of debt onto the country, and one thread of a primary endorsed by Trump, and sure, we'll vote for $3 trillion in debt and pick the issue. We can't cut Medicaid like this. The one guy, Tom Tillis from North Carolina, had to retire. He announced he was retiring from the Senate, went to the floor, and gave a speech about how rural health care was going to get decimated by this bill with the cuts to Medicaid. But he had to retire in order to say that. So the only courageous Republicans are the ones who retire and then give good speeches. But I don't think there's anybody who can hold a candle to him, including JD Vance. So that's an opportunity for Democrats.
And does it mean MAGA does not outlast him?
Like most political movements, it'll hang on for a little bit, but I don't see anybody in the movement who can keep it organized, because it takes a great deal of discipline, because it has moderate Republicans who are pro-gay rights and pro-choice, and they still vote for that. You have fiscal hawks who are really concerned about the debt and deficits, who voted for the first round of Trump tax cuts and this one. So I think all of those fray back into the old kind of Republican Party.
And just one for now, and I'm going to take in some questions. Did you understand from what happened in Ohio how to beat JD Vance?
Yeah.
Tell us.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, we were beating JD Vance by 3 to 5 points in every poll on Labor Day. And so I raised enough money to...
So that's September the 1st?
That's, yeah.
Thereabouts.
Yep, right about that time. And I could not get Chuck Schumer to give me any money. And I was calling him all summer. I'm like,
because you were ahead?
Well, because he had other senators that were prioritized. And I think some way I was against the student loan forgiveness. I was like separating myself from Biden. I wasn't just wearing the blue shirt. I was talking sense. I was talking about debts and deficits and other things that Democrats weren't talking about, which is why I was up 3 to 5 points at Labor Day in Ohio. And he gave me $0, and Mitch McConnell came in and gave JD Vance $50 million. And I just couldn't, I got drowned out. We still only lost by 5, and the governor candidate on our side lost by 24 points, and they were at the top of the ticket. So we outperformed the top of the ticket, which is unheard of, by 19 points. And we had 400,000 people vote for the Republican governor and vote for me as a Democrat. So that cross tickets now, split tickets now in America are very rare, where someone votes for a Democrat and votes for a Republican in high office. And we were able to do that. So I think we have the formula to beat them if we're willing to do the kind of thing. And then, if you can win Ohio, You're going to win Pennsylvania, you're going to win Michigan, you're going to win Wisconsin, you're going to win Arizona, and you might win North Carolina. So it could be a sweep the other way if you run the right candidate with the right message, especially if it's against a guy like Vance.
Which leads me nicely into Keith Raffin's question here. Who do you see as the strongest possible contenders for the 28 Democrat presidential nomination?
Don't know. Don't know.
Shall I give you some suggestions? Whitmer, Pritzker, Shapiro? Any appeal to the
we got some talent. We got some talent. I think it's going to have to be the right person. I think you got to go through the process.
Do you think it has to be a man?
Doesn't have to be a man. I think there are still some concerns in some of these states that in Ohio, for example, it's really hard for a Democratic woman. And I think I think a lot of it. I'm not sure it's a man-woman thing at this point. I think it's a brand thing for us that we come off as weak. So I think this is really interesting. We have 2 females running for governor now in Virginia and New Jersey, and both of them have military backgrounds. So I think a woman like that has appeal because it kind of helps us work through that strength issue. And so it can be a woman. It just has to be, I think, that kind of woman because the larger brand is seen and perceived as weak. So someone with a military background, an intelligence background, could be very, very helpful. So it could be a woman like that.
Interesting the brand point you make, because here in the UK we've had 3 Conservative prime ministers and no Labour female prime ministers and no Labour female prime ministers.
And that could
Do you think the Republicans could have a woman
You
first?
almost think a little bit that the first female president may be a Republican. Maybe.
Let me just ask you one more here. Sarah Cowley, and then put your hand up if you've got any questions in the room. Would the Democrats highlighting the inhumane and cruel treatment of people by Trump's ICE help support for the Democrats and draw attention to Trump's cruelty?
Yeah, well, you have to, because it's a make or break issue. I mean, you can't of all the you got to massage political issue. That's wrong. There's right and there's wrong, and that's wrong. And you have to be very firm on that. At the same time, you have to say, we have a problem with immigration.
And he seems to have stopped it at the southern border.
He's taking, because Biden didn't do anything on it, Trump's taking extreme measures on it. And so the average person is saying, well, somebody had to do something. Maybe he's going a little too far, but my God, somebody had to do something. There may be terrorists coming into this country, and we don't know who these folks are. Let's get an orderly system. And I'm telling you, almost there's a sliver of the electorate on the extreme right that they don't want any immigration at all. But most people, Republicans, are even that are kind of conservative, are saying we just need a process. You're not allowed to jump the line. You're just not allowed to jump the line. It's not right. It's a values issue. And very interestingly, when you look at the numbers in New York and New Jersey in the last election that went more for Trump than ever before, and you look at the Latino vote that went more for Trump than ever before, and you look at the black vote that went for Trump more than ever before, including improvements on 20 and 16 in the last election, the immigrants are saying we have a problem with immigration issue. The Latino community is saying we have a problem with the immigration issue. I had to wait in line. Why do you get to jump the line? And then if you go to New York, I was just there last week, and people were saying that the immigrants who were there were staying in a hotel, getting put up in a hotel, and these are the immigrants that Abbott flew up from Texas, and they flew up from Florida. They're living...
Which was quite clever.
Very clever. And so now they're in New York. They're getting put up in a hotel, and people can now see it. It's not on the border, far away. It's in New York City. People can see it. People now know about it. They're getting $1,000 cards for food. And now I was talking to a working class construction trades person who works not far from that where they were, and he's like, who's giving me $1,000 free food card? You don't think I need $1,000? I'm working in New York City here. I may be doing okay, but I'm hanging on by the skin of my teeth. My wife's a nurse. I'm a construction worker. We work hard. We don't get to see our kids a lot. And I have to watch.
So it's fairness. It feels unfair.
It feels unfair.
And someone I was speaking to last week, an analyst, election analyst, made the argument that Hispanic men voting for Trump was absolutely critical in the last election. And they said, I don't know if you agree with this or not, that where Hispanic men go, so the American public overall tends to go. And one of the arguments they were making is that some of the ICE raids, which don't appear to be targeting criminals, they appear much more arbitrary than that, could actually turn off some of those voters. But clearly, from what you're saying, it's a difficult issue to deal with.
You have to deal with both sides. So again, you've got to be, I think, strong in the fact that that's unacceptable. People with masks going after citizens, like, get your stuff together before you go knock on someone's door. You better have the facts right. And you better keep due process. It's a hard-won right for the American people. We can do that in a fair way and prevent this mass migration into the country. Like, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. And that's where the Democrats need to be. And then you start saying to a Hispanic man in Lorain, Ohio, or in North Carolina, you can trust us on immigration. You know, and I know we talk about trust and belief, and do they believe in the system? You can trust us on immigration. That's not tolerable, and neither is that. And we're going to give you solutions to both. You don't have to choose.
Okay. Do we have questions in the room? Go for it. Hannah.
She's pulling the trump card here.
Yeah. I'm not going to go for anyone else first.
Yeah.
Hannah White from the IFG. So obviously, at the start of the Trump presidency, we saw the sort of shock and awe approach of Doge and Elon Musk. I'm interested in what you think will be the sort of lasting impacts of the Trump presidency on the US government, how US government works and its functioning.
I think the Doge thing, the wheels have come off, so I don't think there will be a whole lot from Doge, and it was clearly like not the way you go about trying to reform government. You have to have congressional buy-in. You know, that's by law they're spending money on things, and you can't go against that because you need a new law. All of that set aside. Having said that, the idea is something that I think Democrats should take and run with. Bill Clinton had a whole reinventing government plan back in the 90s. Anybody who's got their eyes open knows that the government is terrible at functioning and delivering services. Like, that's not a newsflash. And so, again, Democrats have not put that forward. And so, again, you're left with Doge and Elon Musk with the chainsaw on the stage saying this is how we're going to do it, which is not the right way. I do think that Trump has been very supportive of cryptocurrency and blockchain, and there's some issues with the meme coins and stuff, clearly. But that technology, along with AI, can be transformational in how our government starts administering services and really creating a lot of efficiencies, a lot of transparencies. He's supported that. I don't know if he completely understands how it's going to work, but it can have a huge impact. I think that will be part of the legacy of a Trump administration, will be as those technologies unfold within the bureaucracies, they can be clearly transformational. And that will have more impact than Doge ever will.
What impact do you think the breakdown in the relationship between Musk and Trump will have?
I have no idea. It's pretty entertaining, though, isn't it? To watch the breakup unfold. I don't know.
Do you think the money matters? How important was Elon Musk to the last victory?
Yeah, it was huge. I mean, huge. And then Musk, you know, obviously relies on the government a lot. But I don't think Trump wants to be in a big fight with Elon Musk. And Elon Musk wants just enough pushback that he stays semi-relevant.
I was thinking about the same question. you posed at first, I think the next president is going to think, oh, I can sign a lot more executive orders. I can influence the Department of Justice. I can influence the Supreme Court. I can influence the universities, because Trump has his hands in every part of the United government and beyond. And I think the next president is going to, the presidency has been strengthened, and don't you think? And it's going to be changed with the next person, whoever that is.
Yeah.
I think it sets a precedent.
Yeah, I think it does. And honestly, like, some of it's good. Like the bureaucracy, I don't know your government here, but I'm assuming it's similar. The bureaucracy in getting something done in the United States is insane. Like, it's crazy. If you want to get a transmission line built or a pipeline built, okay, even for natural gas, to displace coal, okay, great for the environment, significantly better for the environment. It could take up to 11 different agencies, that's okay, 11 different agencies and 7 to 10 years, sometimes longer, to get approval. Now we have AI, we're reshoring chip manufacturing, we need energy. And we can't get anything built because of the structure of the bureaucracy. The levels of reform that we need in a modern society to be able to function to help people, not just to do it because we want to do it, but so that we can actually help people with education, with health care. Like, we have no preventative health care. I mean, we have some, but like, we have a disease management system in America. We don't have a health care system. We don't talk about health. We talk about, we wait till you get sick and then we'll spend a lot of money taking care of you. Like, to be able to have an executive that can break through that bureaucracy in some way and actually get stuff done is really appealing.
I mean, I can see
the downside is you got guys with masks running around locking people up. So it's being used in a way that is not always
I mean, I was just going
great.
to pose that to you. I mean, it's one person without the ring of accountability around them.
Yeah.
I mean, I was reading through his dozens of executive orders, some of them things he didn't say he was going to do before the election. Mm-hmm. Do you not worry that that level of power with one person can be abused?
Yeah, of course. In some sense, there's going to need to be like a George Washington moment, too, where it's like you let go of power, you know, where Washington didn't run for a third term. And so it's going to be a really delicate balance. But I think generally speaking, I think it's so appealing to the American people within the context of a broken system that's not working for them, to have somebody, for God's sake, help me cut through this stuff. And I think some of it's going to be the technology that I think can be really, really helpful. But that's the appeal, and you always got to be careful, especially because it can be abused, and it is being abused. But at the end of the day, I think there's appeal for someone that's able to cut through it. And in Congress, I mean, this is why reform, as Democrats, reform has to be the flag that we're carrying. Reform economic system, reform the political system. We need reform, and Congress is not functioning at all. I mean, they're passing huge bills, and there aren't hearings on it. No one's vetting it. There's no experts weighing in. It's just willy-nilly. We want a tax cut, and we're going to cut health care. Like, and what's the impact of that going to be? No one cares in the current majority in Congress.
Lady there, thank you.
Hello, thank you. Elizabeth Mistry, former foreign desk on the Herald. Two very quick questions. One, would you consider running again? And two, would you ever consider a partnership with Elon Musk, either politically, financially, on crypto, or in any other way?
Yeah, I may run again. I tell my wife, much to her disagreement, that I think I have one more race left in me.
What does she say?
Let's talk about something else. Yeah, so maybe. Partnership with Elon Musk, I don't know. I was actually kind of a Musk fan prior to the last few years. I thought he was a very innovative guy. I really liked his technologies and Starlink, and he seemed, pro understanding of the environment and the challenges we have with climate, and wanted to do that, I think, in a pretty thoughtful way. And then I don't know what happened, so I wouldn't feel really comfortable I mean, I'd work with anybody in the context of trying to get some good stuff done, but like, I don't know about a partnership or not.
Can I throw in a question here? Oh, sorry, and then I'll just pull in one more.
Yeah.
What do you make of the way Keir Starmer is handling Donald Trump?
Well, you know, I don't really have any advice to give on that, honestly, because it's such a delicate thing. I think you have to do what is in the best, generally speaking, with your relationship to the United States, best economic interest of your country. And you need to say and do what you need to do to protect your country. And, you know, and not worry about criticism from other countries who may not be handling it the same way you are, because you have that responsibility. You have that, you know, fiduciary duty to your people. So it seems like he's doing okay. I mean, you know, if you're not in the crosshairs of Donald Trump, then you're probably handling it okay.
Right for him to come over for a state visit later this year?
If the king invites you, then that's the right thing to do, right?
Okay.
That gentleman in the back has had his hand up since the beginning. So.
Okay. And then, should we take more than one at once?
Yeah,
we'll take three at once.
Mark Paul from the Irish Times. I was just going to ask, what direction do you think the Republican Party is likely to go after Trump? I mean, has he set the party on an inexorable path further and further to the right, or do you think there's a chance they might tack back to some sort of, you know, something that we might recognise as a normal Republican Party after he's gone?
Who was it at the back? Okay.
Thank you. Derek McAllister, independent financial analyst. We read again in the press this morning that allegedly his association with Epstein is driving a wedge between Trump and MAGA. Firstly, to what extent do you think that's true? Secondly, to what extent do you think that matters?
Okay, and we'll take one more lady here.
You're testing my short-term memory here with all that.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Hi, Maggie Ryan, policy analyst at Stonehaven.
Maggie Ryan?
Maggie Ryan, yeah.
Oh my God.
Might be cousins.
We have to.
I also went to college in Ohio, so.
Did you? Where?
Xavier.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Very good.
Great to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I had a question sort of going back to a bit of the Mamdani conversation. And you noted that, you know, it was a really important campaign and he ran a really great campaign, but it represents sort of a very small, you know, already quite left-leaning electorate. But it seemed to me when he got elected that there was sort of like a national response to it, like people all over the country and the world were following that. So do you think that even though it is sort of a relatively small electorate, it might represent sort of a shift to the left a bit in sort of the general Democratic establishment overall and sort of the brand, or do you still think it sort of goes against the party overall?
I don't think we'll just work our way backwards.
Mamdani, Epstein, and the future of the Republican Party.
Oh my God.
It's all right.
Sounds like a weird dream somebody had last night. I walked into a bar and it was Mamdani and Epstein. Yeah, I don't think from a policy perspective it's going to shift, but I hope it shifts around the like I said, the affordability thing, and I think the excitement was generally around we struck a nerve, like Democrats figured out how to like talk, and it struck a nerve with an electorate that, you know, and again everything's kind of in contrast. It was like Cuomo, all his baggage. Lots of baggage, COVID, women, the whole, like all kinds of stuff. And just being like a Cuomo in New York after decades and decades. And then here's this new young fresh face. But I think the excitement seemed to be struck a nerve and there was some energy there. And so I think Democrats are looking for like, where's the energy at? And so I think in that regard it was good. Again, it taught Democrats, I think, how to talk, and I hope we learn from it. I don't think it's a significant policy shift, because if we go down that road again, we're gonna write off Pennsylvania, Ohio. You've been to Ohio. Yeah. You've been to Cincinnati, Ohio. You really get it. Michigan and Wisconsin. So then you can be in the wilderness if you go in there in those states and talk with the straight socialist agenda. The Epstein thing's really interesting. I mean, clearly there's something there because everyone's lying about it. That's my, after 25 years in politics, if a bunch of people are lying There's usually something there. I don't know exactly what it is. But it is, I think, kind of the first time that it seems like the administration is lying, Bondi's lying. Like she shifted her story significantly, and the base doesn't like that because they think they're going to get all the Democrats with the Epstein thing, and clearly it may have broader implications. So I think you keep your eye on it. In fact, I saw an ad today for a Senate candidate that is highlighting the riff against the Republican incumbent, highlighting the riff on Epstein. So keep your eye on it. I think it can play. So it's very, very insightful. And can the Republicans keep it together, or who wins out? That's a great question. I have no clue. I don't think anybody does. Again, you're going to have your really extreme factions on immigration. You're going to have your moderates, generally speaking, on social issues and being fiscal conservative, but kind of more liberal on social issues. You're going to have your fiscal hawks on balancing the budget and how that's important. You're going to have your generally reform-minded folks, and then you're going to have your tax cutters. It's really he's assembled an amazing coalition of Republicans who will not cross him if he disagrees with you on any of those issues. And you're going to have the pro-defense group. Trump falls into that category too, especially after this budget, with a huge increase in defense spending. So I don't know. Again, just looking at it, it could be a great opportunity for Democrats because when I ran, there was a huge Republicans for Ryan initiative in the state. A lot of the former senator from Ohio, Rob Portman, Republican, his chief of staff headed up my Republican for Ryan campaign. Pretty big deal. We're pretty excited about that. So I think there's that group that if we come in, and Claire and I have talked about this, if we talk about balancing the budget, and that's important. If you come in with, again, recognizing it's not 1990s, it's now, but those people are still fairly fiscally conservative. They would love to hear a reform message about how we got to reform. We're spending all of this. How's America spend all this money on health care? We spend more money than all the industrialized countries on health care. We get the worst results. There's a reform message in there for us. But Democrats, so the Republicans go and they say, we're going to cut it. And the Democrats say, no, don't cut anything. So there's a nuance there that I think can have some appeal to start pulling those voters over. And again, I think there's a big reform. I think we're talking about AI and blockchain, and there's going to be a lot of weapons systems, for example, in defense that you can get rid of, because AI and drones are going to be able to handle things much more cheaply. So anyway, I don't know what they're going to do, but as a partisan Democrat, pro-American, we got to go in and figure it out because we can pull a lot of those factions over.
We're almost out of time, but I'm just going to ask you one final question from someone watching, Fariba, and one final question from me.
Okay.
And you can they're quite different, but hopefully you can wrap them together. You talked about not going into a room and speaking about abortion. Mm-hmm. The question from Fariba was that women in the UK are generally appalled by the removal of women's rights over their own bodies that we see in the US, Roe v. Wade. What's your take on this, and how long do you think this kind of policy will remain? And my final question is, you've talked about why what we're seeing on the left of the Democratic Party isn't the answer. I know with PPI you recently did some work in Colorado, suggesting that perhaps they have the answer. Mm-hmm. And I know we don't have much time, but I'm wondering if you could sum up what you think the alternative vision is that's been so successful there.
First on the women's rights, again, I'm completely supportive. I think we have to get back to a Roe v. Wade in the United States. Planned Parenthood basically got defunded in this bill, which did a lot of the preventative health care for women, screenings, birth control, and all of that. That's where the vast majority of the American people are, and that's where we should be. And I mention that as I talk about it because that's generally baked in already to voters, right? You don't have to keep telling voters you're for that when they already know you're for that. And you're just wasting time and money not talking to persuade people on those other issues, like I talked about walking into a room. We're good with those voters, and we should continue to push that and advance it and support it when we get power to make sure that those rights are ensured for sure 100%. We're kind of working through exactly what it looks like because it's a lot more. It's not free this and free, from the left versus the center. It's not free this, free this, free this, free this. It's okay, how do we educate the workforce and focus on apprenticeships? And then how does that work with all these local boards that do, in community colleges and local workforce boards and high schools? How do we work this? So we've got to explain and we've got to come up with these ideas. But I think generally speaking, it's an initiative that focuses on economic growth. It focuses on lifting people up by giving them more skills in an economy that's shifting, in a world that's shifting a lot, and helping people understand and be able to navigate that world. It's a lot more about growth than redistribution, and it's a lot about reform. That to me is that economic argument. And how do we modernize education? How do we modernize workforce development? How do we make our schools are built for an age that no longer exists. How do we retool it? How do we train our teachers differently? How do we focus on the overall health and well-being of the student? How do we make sure that there's art and music and dance and all of these other things in the schools that help a kid gain confidence, find interest, and then teach the core essentials through their passion? And we've just shut this down. And what's our schools have become you're going to see a mechanic, and it's you're going to take this piece out and this piece, or we're going to put this part in and make you think this way and that. It's we're trying to educate human beings here. Where's civic education play in this? Because clearly there's the lack of civic understanding. I remember when I first ran, I was in the state Senate in Ohio. I was 25 years old, and someone came up to me, and this is when Hillary just ran for the Senate in New York, and they asked me if I have seen Hillary down in Columbus, Ohio. They didn't know she was in D.C. and I was in Columbus, and
right.
So there's a lack of appreciation. And lastly, I just say is we were kind of talking about before we got up here how absolutely difficult these jobs are. I say that now being out for 3 years, and you don't say it when you're sitting you're asking for sympathy from the voter. Poor me, how hard this job is, but you just think about everything that's happening. Healthcare, education, the shifts in the economy, globalization, automation, energy, climate, go just the list. And how do you really try to wrap your arms around all this stuff with people who get upset if you hit your phone and the website doesn't pop up in 3 seconds? You're what the hell's wrong with my phone, right? Or you're hungry and you can go get fast food, and satisfy yourself almost immediately. You have a question about something, you can ask Siri, we did this on our whole trip here. We're going down the river, and we're seeing all where the Mayflower came back up, and we're just getting on our phone and saying, hey, asking questions. You get instantaneous, and yet have the emotional understanding that this piece, A, is really more difficult, because we're dealing with a lot of people, 435 members of the Congress, 2 houses, 100 senators, different races, religions, parts of the country, dialects, religious beliefs, all of that, all come into a head to try to solve national problems. that's really, really difficult in a world that's spinning so fast. And that's why I get back to just to end, I guess. There's a spiritual dimension to this of like slowing down. You know, athletes are taught all the time in the heat of an event on the field, the great athletes have learned to slow down. Like, you talk to them and they'll say, it slowed down. It was like going in slow motion, actually, when I kicked the game-winning kick or whatever. There's a sense of belonging, that great book about the soccer team, about belonging. Like, that connection is like, it's not airy-fairy. It's like real. Like, we grew up in tribes. You know, we were meant to be together. And we're so disconnected and so apart that it's just fear and anger, and that's driving politicians. And until we have some kind of spiritual, you know, reconciliation, again, I'm not like an evangelical Christian or, you know, Orthodox Jew or anything. I'm like, just, we're all human, and we better figure out how to get on with each other.
Well, on that note, I think we will bring it to a close. Tim Ryan, thank you so much.
Appreciate
that was fascinating.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Great job.
I don't have to tell anyone anything. And thank you, everyone, for being